this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Lost support through telehealth, but it feels overwhelming and rushed? Check out OrderlyMeds.com now. OrderlyMeds.com was built to be different. Here, you connect with real doctors who take the time to understand your goals, review your eligibility, and guide you through a plan that's right for you. Orderly Meds provides access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide, including both name brand options and personalized compound versions when appropriate. So you have choices backed by clinical oversight, not guesswork. It's a simpler, more supportive telehealth experience designed around people who want clarity, care, and confidence in their weight loss journey. And your medication is delivered directly to your home in discreet packaging, so your experience stays private from start to finish. Do your research, ask the right questions, then visit orderlymeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. Again, that's orderlymeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.
Tax season has arrived, and doing taxes without the right help can feel overwhelming. Intuit TurboTax is here now to guide you through it with confidence. Match with a TurboTax full-service expert who handles everything for you from start to finish. Your dedicated expert checks every single deduction and credit to help you get the best possible outcome so you can feel confident you're getting every dollar you deserve. And the best part? You'll see real-time updates on your expert's progress right on your phone while you live your life. Plus, you get unlimited expert help at no extra cost, even on nights and weekends during tax season. Visit TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax full-service experts. Real-time updates only on iOS mobile app.
Did you know that parents rank teaching financial literacy as the toughest life skill? That's where Greenlight comes in, the debit card and money app made for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and track spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn how to earn, save, and spend responsibly, while parents have peace of mind knowing smart money habits are being built with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/iHeart. That's greenlight.com/iHeart.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Moore. I've always had an affinity for the phrase, looking for a needle in a haystack. And it seems extreme. It really does. You know, when you first hear that term, you're thinking, my Lord, how granular is this bit of information that you're looking for, that it is this complex in order to kind of, I don't know, tease it out of everything else that surrounds it. And I've worked cases like that where you walk onto a scene. I have vivid memories, and these are the worst, vivid memories of walking into death scenes of people that have died in their apartments, and they are hoarders, and it's a nightmare scenario. It's as bad as you might think that it is, because you're trying to understand why this person is dead. And it would be very easy to dismiss them and say, well, they had these issues and that sort of thing. But still, you never know what is hidden within those canyons of stacked newspapers and old magazines and saved beer cans and all manner of things I've seen in these apartments. Today, though, we're going to talk about a case that's currently in the news, or what we think might be cases. We don't really know yet. But what we do know is that authorities are now apparently on the hunt on the search of their own local haystack, looking for not one, but maybe two needles. What I'm talking about is the former Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, not too far away from Santa Fe, where two young women were allegedly murdered and buried. Coming to you from the beautiful campus of Jacksonville State University, I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. I thought of you, Dave, when I saw an article drop, and it was, I guess, a week ago, about this very topic, that authorities were going, and about a week or two prior to that, they said that they were on the scent or thinking about going. And this harkened back to an earlier conversation that you and I had, what was it, 2 years ago, I guess, where I said, I'm no prophet.
Right.
I'm no prophet.
Gotcha.
All right. But what I said was they got to check that place out.
Yep.
Because if I was looking for a dude that had in their custody, allegedly, young women who could not be traced, perhaps from Eastern European countries, where am I going to try to get rid of them?
Yes, you
somebody
did.
that couldn't speak English, that couldn't, really take care of themselves in the vastness of America. And my Lord, when I found out about that ranch, I was thinking, that's a prime spot, dude.
Yeah. Well, for those of you who don't know why, we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein and his Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. In the treasure trove dump of documents of Epstein was an email, an anonymous email that was sent to a broadcaster, a conservative talk show host named Eddie Aragon in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It was sent to him in November of 2019, 3 months after the death of Jeffrey Epstein. And in this email, a person who was on staff at Zorro Ranch, Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch, writes in this letter that there were two young foreign girls that died at the ranch during rough fetish sex. They were strangled, died of strangulation during rough sex, and their bodies were buried on part of Zorro Ranch property, specifically an area of the ranch that is leased by Epstein's company from the state of New Mexico for cattle grazing. So this very specific thing is told in email form to this talk show host. And by the way, Joe, the person also in this email offered to share 7 videos that the employee took of people at Zorro Ranch having sex with underage girls. And this individual offered to sell these thumb drive of these 7 videos in exchange for 1 Bitcoin. Now, I looked it up. November of 2019, 1 Bitcoin cost about $8,000. So $8,000. Well, Eddie Aragon did not pay the money. As a matter of fact, he didn't reply to the email. He called the FBI. He thought the email was very specific enough, and so he turned it over to the FBI and then never heard anything more about it. You wouldn't have heard about it now except for the email dump. The document dump from Epstein that has come out. And that's why right now plans are being made to search what used to be called Zorro Ranch, owned by Jeffrey Epstein. And by the way, he owned it from 1993 until after his death. His company still owned it. They finally sold it, and it's changed hands twice since then.
So it was roughly within his estate for about 20 years, right?
Yes, it was from 93.
I mean, his estate was settled in 23. Am I accurate about that? I think it approximates that at least. And I think the question is, how much time did he actually stay there? Because this is what I do. I don't know a lot about rich folks, but this is something I do know, is that the reason they're rich, they have the ability to hold on to their money the way other people might not think about it. And so they will purchase things, like ranches, okay, because they can shelter money there. And, I wouldn't know if Jeffrey Epstein could tell the difference between a Longhorn or a Holstein. I have no idea. You know what I'm saying? He's not one of these people that strikes me that, kind of came up through the roots,
right.
through the common clay of people out there, that he would understand. But what he does understand, or apparently understood on some level, is that you have to shelter money. And so it's not surprising, that you would have a purchase of a place like this. And my Lord, this thing is massive. I mean, I'm talking roughly 8,000 acres, right?
Well, it depends, Joe. It depends on who you're actually talking to. And again, now it goes back to, well, who are you going to believe? Which source do you believe? Yeah. It's either 7,000 acres or 13,000 square acres. I don't know, but it's a lot. It's a lot of property. What we do know, though, is that Epstein acquired the property from the former governor of New Mexico, Bruce King. Epstein bought it in 93, and then he leased 1,244 acres of grazing grazing land. He leased this land from the state of New Mexico in 97 and 99. The reason I'm pointing those two things out to you, 1997 and 1999, the state of New Mexico leased the property to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Jeffrey Epstein was accused by Annie Farmer in 1996. Annie and her sister Maria Farmer were taken in by Ghislaine Maxwell, just like all the other girls were trafficked. And Annie Farmer, underage, she was 15, I think, at the time, ended up in New Mexico. She's an painter, arts thing. And anyway, long story longer, go look up Annie Farmer and her sister Marie, because Annie Farmer spoke out early and often. And so whenever I heard about Virginia Giuffre and people like that, Annie Farmer was suffering PTSD way before any of those things came along, and was standing up saying, hey, you got to put a stop to this guy. Nobody did, Joe. And as a matter of fact, even after Annie Farmer made those claims, the state of New Mexico leased land to Jeffrey Epstein. It was only in 2019, after his death, that the attorney general or vice attorney general in New Mexico said, oh, we got to stop this. This is horrible. And so they canceled the lease, the land lease. But the thing about the land lease, Joe, and the reason it's important to know how big it is and where it is because that's where, according to the email received by the talk show host in Albuquerque, that's where we would find the bodies of two young girls, foreigners, just like you said we would, Joe. Just like you said you wondered what they did with them. And at the time, I thought, he's probably right, but I don't get it. I didn't see it. I could not grasp that. Now I do. You were right all along.
Yeah, well, Lord knows I don't want to be right about any of this stuff. In a perfect world, I wish none of it was going on, because I don't want to pollute my brain any further with it. Because there's evil that just surrounds this whole thing. And, I have my own thoughts about, the idea that it's rooted in demonic forces as far as I'm concerned. The thing about it is that if you are involved in this, Dave, let's face it. Let's look at this. Let's look at this from an investigative standpoint. Let's try to detach ourselves just for a moment from the emotion of it all, and look at it from, if you're investigating a case like this at its root, this is a criminal enterprise, and you've got multiple conspirators that are engaged in this behavior. Whatever it is, whether it's the trafficking, whether it is solicitation, whether it was acquisition, and anything else that's peripheral to that. And that's the way the police have to approach this, because it's really, really easy. And I understand, don't get me wrong, I'm not diminishing the victims. It's really easy to get caught up in the emotion of it, but the emotion is not going to get you into court. And, well, it might get you into court, but it's not going to push you across the finish line when it comes to proof. And you're going to have scientific proof. You're going to have the circumstantial bits and pieces that are going to come together that are going to form this mosaic, that those that are left can be held to account. Okay. And so my point here is that if you're engaging in this behavior, you're acquiring these and people, all right, regardless of their age, all right, you're acquiring people to satisfy this criminal behavior, all right. What are you going to do with them afterwards? And as we know, people that are psychopaths like this, and this is pure psychopathy, they can dehumanize fellow humans to the point where they become garbage and they're easy to dispose of. They satisfy whatever need that they might have, and then they're going to move on to the next. It's not like, that there's any kind of intimacy or love or respect or anything that's involved in this. This comes down to, it always has come down to the victims. And, if you're a grown adult, you do what you want to do, but we're talking about, my focus here are individuals that are kids, and how were they acquired, and then how can they protect themselves? In the face of all this, particularly when you've got very powerful names that are involved in all of this, how are you going to protect yourself? You're some kid from Eastern Europe, or I don't know, Western Europe, wherever the hell you're from, and you can't speak the language, and you're certainly at a disadvantage. Somebody's been, waving cash in front of your face. We're going to take care of you for the rest of your life, or we're going to set you up in something. And the next thing you know, you're out in New Mexico, and it looks like you've been set down on the surface of Mars, and surrounding you, as far as the eye can see, is nothing but tumbleweed and caliche and a vast mansion and a man who has designs on what he's going to do with you, and none of it is good.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Lost support through telehealth, but it feels overwhelming and rushed? Check out orderlymeds.com now. Orderlymeds.com was built to be different. Here, you connect with real doctors who take the time to understand your goals, review your eligibility, and guide you through a plan that's right for you. Orderly Meds provides access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide, including both name brand options and personalized compound versions when appropriate. So you have choices backed by clinical oversight, not guesswork. It's a simpler, more supportive telehealth experience designed around people who want clarity, care, and confidence in their weight loss journey. And your medication is delivered directly to your home in discreet packaging, so your experience stays private from start to finish. Do your research, ask the right questions, then visit orderlymeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. Again, that's orderlymeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.
Are you a fraud-paying American? It's a fact that 1 in 4 honest, hard-working, tax-paying Americans has been a victim of identity theft. With LifeLock Identity Theft Protection, though, if your identity is stolen, they fix it, guaranteed, and get you your money back. Last year, the IRS flagged over $16 billion in refunds for identity fraud. That's billions of dollars that could come from your salary, overtime, or second job. But this year, you don't need to stay a victim. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second for your personal information and alerts you to threats you could easily miss on your own. And if your information does fall into the wrong hands, only LifeLock has U.S.-based restoration specialists who are backed by the $1 Million Protection Package. Because this tax season, fraud-paying American is something no American should have to claim. Visit LifeLock.com/iHeart and save up to 40% your first year. That's 40% off at LifeLock.com/iHeart. Terms apply.
It never happens at a good time. The pipe bursts at midnight. The heater quits on the coldest night. Suddenly, you're overwhelmed. That's when HomeServe is here. For $4.99 a month, you're never alone. Just call their 24/7 hotline and a local pro is on the way. Trusted by millions, HomeServe delivers peace of mind when you need it most. For plans starting at just $4.99 a month, go to HomeServe.com. That's HomeServe.com. Not available everywhere. Most plans range between $4.99 to $11.99 a month your first year. Terms apply on covered repairs.
I don't talk a lot about my son on air, but I gotta tell you something real quick, brother. I had a conversation with my son, who's a geospatial scientist, and I had to have that conversation with him before we came to air so that I could understand some things, because his area of expertise is looking at landforms, all right, and using all kinds of modalities to do that. And of course, proud papa, I think that he's absolutely brilliant, and he is. And so I had a conversation with him, not so much as a father to son, but as an old, forensic scientist to somebody that deals in geoanalysis. And those tools that those people use. And I was like, son,
explain what geoanalysis is to those of us who are
taking imagery of landforms and trying to understand them, from a bird's eye view, if you will. And that's kind of the narrow way, or very broad way, not narrow way, broad way of explaining it to somebody that doesn't, sometimes I'll have dinner with him and Dave, he'll start speaking to me and it's like, what are you speaking in ancient Greek? I have no idea what you're saying, but it's fascinating because he's certainly got a lens on the world that no one else has. And, when you're talking about, geoinformation systems and all these sorts of things reading satellite imagery and LIDAR and all these things, that drone stuff, it's mind blowing. And the technology, we talk a lot about technology that we have, in forensics now, but you begin to think about, the stuff that they can do with satellite imagery and photo imagery and all that stuff. And that's the world that he inhabits. So I posed this to him. I was like, son, let's say you had to tackle a problem and you were trying to gather information about a large parcel of land, and that you were doing this, I don't know, for whatever reason, intelligence gathering, or maybe you're going to do an assessment of land for, say, somebody's going to purchase land, which is something that they do. They do all these things. What's the best way to tackle this? I said, are you going to use satellite imagery? And he's like, okay, Dad, here's how it works. He said, what you're going to do is you're going to go back and you're going to gather what kind of satellite imagery existed of the Zorro Ranch prior to him purchasing it, if there is anything that predates, that 1993. And then you work forward from that. Any kind of imagery where there's been passovers, where you can kind of see the change in the topography, the way the landforms, like building a structure, how did that impact, the local land? Also, if you've got animals out there, are they impacting the environment? All this stuff is hydrology, he talks about, and, just all this stuff that is just so far beyond my pay grade. But it made me really, have a moment of clarity about it, because I kind of sensed that this was the case. But he was talking about how if you're going to try to validate something, if you're going to send, in military terms, information downrange, to pass it on to people that are in the intel world, you have to know from where you're coming from before you know where you're going, really, and to assess that land. And like if anything has changed, And, he took me through the steps of this. And it's like, would you use like satellite imagery? He said, yeah, in the beginning you would. But he said, what's really critical about a landform like this is that is going to be multispectral analysis cameras on either planes or drones flying over, where they're kind of going back and forth and back and forth. And that gets you an idea of what you're looking at in the present. And then you go back and you compare that to satellite imagery that may or may not exist. I don't know if it does or not. And then you see how the land changes, because when people introduce themselves into a space, they're going to begin clearing space. All right. And the land out there, I mentioned in our close in the first segment, I talked about Caliche. Caliche, and you had an experience with this, Dave. I know, having lived in New Mexico for a while, is this hard clay. And I would say that it's like a naturally occurring asphalt almost. If you were to try to put a shovel to it, good luck. Yeah. Because there's not a lot of give with it. So if you're going to try to do anything with the composition of the soil out there, you better break out the heavy equipment. And this brings us back to this place being a ranch, right? You're not going to have as much change there, for instance, as say if you went to the beach, if you went to the Gulf Coast, all right, and you've got shifting sand, you've got rain pouring, torrential rain that changes, the hydrology around there will change everything in a second. All you got to do is look at people that have beach houses that are no longer beach houses, they're water houses, because things change like that. Not so much here. Things stay in place. And so from an investigative standpoint, if I'm looking for bodies, Dave, I'm talking about, this is a true opportunity, because you might be looking at a real entombment here, okay, where, because the nature of the soil that you're talking about breaking up and digging, because what we've heard is that these bodies are buried, right? And we haven't heard burned, we had, thrown away. We've heard buried
in the cattle grazing land.
Yeah. And I don't know if that, and again, I'm no geologist. Okay. Which I think they need to have one on the team, by the way, just FYI here. If that changes from, say, some ridge line where the geology will change, because it'll rise up out of an area and you don't know what kind of stone is underlying all that and all that stuff that geologists get into. But just digging a hole out there and putting a body or bodies into these holes that I still contend, in order to dig a big enough one, you're going to have heavy equipment. You're going to have at least a bobcat probably in order to facilitate this. And again, going back to the fact that this is a ranch, if you have a ranch, you have to have heavy equipment. All right. And what was it you said? You said something interesting about the ranch that they actually had that people might be interested to find. Yeah.
This place is so big. Just so you know, the house that was built on this property by Epstein is 26,000 square feet. That's the house they built, Joe. His living room in this big house is supposedly as big as my home. That's how big of a house. But this property is so large, with such a large house, there's a helipad, there's a private landing strip where you can land a jet. Beyond that,
jet?
They have their own. Yeah, you've got the smaller jets. I'm not talking about a 737, but
No. I know what you're saying, but that's different than a Cub Piper,
prop.
It's not a Piper Cub or whatever.
It's not one of those prop planes. But on top of all of that, Joe, and they have their own their own fire department. You've got a firehouse. That means there's a fire truck, and there's the means for putting out fires. Which, by the way, when you're out in an area like that, you do have occasional wildfires that come up. There's a movie that came out several years ago called Hell or High Water.
Yeah.
And Jeff Bridges plays this Texas Ranger, and he's driving. They're trying to catch these brothers who are robbing banks.
Ben Foster and Chris Pine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good. Oh, it's a great movie. And the guy that did, And I'm not going down that path right now, but there's a scene in it where they're headed towards a bank and they come upon these guys driving cattle on horseback, and there's a fire. There's a fire on the plains, and they're driving the cattle down towards the river. And the cowboy tells the sheriff, he goes, "No wonder my kids won't get into this 2020, and I'm on a horse driving cattle down to the river to get away from a fire." Well, that Jeff Bridges' partner says, "Shall we call it in?" And he looks at him and goes, "Who? These boys are on their own."
Yeah.
And that's why Jeffrey Epstein had his own fire department out there with a truck and the means to put out fires, because if they get started, they will go for a long while before they just run out of fuel. So that's how big this area was, that he had his own fire. Yeah, his own firehouse.
Yeah. And look, if you're looking to do away or get rid of something, how many cases have we covered, brother, where, we're talking about dismembered remains, where people are putting them in trash bags and they're alongside of the road. Man, you could dismember somebody out there and nobody's going to come along. No one's going to find it. It's out there. But the fact that they went to the trouble of doing roughly an entombment here, which is bizarre to me in this environment. Why would you choose to do that if that is in fact the story?
Truth. Yeah. Well, all right, Joe, let me ask you something, because you and I have talked about as bodies, as they degrade.
Yeah.
Animals feast.
Yeah.
And if you don't bury a body, there are wild animals that will take the remains and scatter them. Now, even if you've got a lot of acreage, even if you've got a lot of area, you are leaving something to chance if you just leave the remains on top. So other than chopping it up and burning, which not everybody has the stomach for, and most of the stories we do about those people, they get caught. So if we go down to this and think, okay, we've got two young foreign girls have died, strangled during rough sex, and Epstein needs to get rid of the bodies. And by the way, it was at the behest of Ghislaine Maxwell. Madam G is how she was referred to, that the bodies were disposed of, buried in that grassy area that was supposed to be for cattle, which they didn't have any cattle to graze, by the way. So I'm wondering if the land that has the grass would be different than the grass over here by the arroyo with the tumbleweeds and the lizards. And, I'm guessing it would be. It would.
Yeah, I would think that it would be. Geologically, some of it's going to shift and change. And that's why whatever team that they're putting together, and this is started in the office of the state attorney general. All right. The whole impetus behind this and whatever their rationale is, I have no idea. I'm just glad somebody's moving on it. But I can tell you this from an investigative standpoint. This is not to be taken lightly. And listen, if you've got individuals that have been missing all these years, they're not going anywhere. Take your time, plan, put your teams together, and think before you ever stick a shovel in dirt, because something might be out there, and you don't want to run the risk of being a bull in the proverbial china shop.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. 100. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
When people turn to healthcare for weight loss, they're looking for real support. That's why more people are choosing OrderlyMeds.com. Orderly Meds connects you with real doctors and access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide. No guessing, just a more supportive experience. And all shipped directly to your door in discreet packaging. Do your research. Ask questions. Then visit OrderlyMeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. That's OrderlyMeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.
Tired of spills and stains on your sofa? Wash away your worries with Anabay. Anabay is the only designer sofa that's machine washable inside and out, starting at just $699. Plus, Anabay sofas are pet-friendly, stain-resistant, and feature changeable slip covers and modular pieces. Get up to 60% off site-wide with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Visit WashableSofas.com to get yours now. That's WashableSofas.com. Offers are subject to change, and certain restrictions may apply.
Flag football is exploding, and iFlag is leading the way. As the Guinness World Record holder, iFlag hosts premier flag football tournaments nationwide for boys, girls, high school girls, and adults. From first-time players to elite competitors, iFlag delivers top-level competition, unforgettable experiences, and a community built around the game. Ready to be part of it? Join the movement. Find your tournament and learn more at iflag.org. That's iflag.org.
Okay, so they're going to set about this task, allegedly, First off, I want to see the teams. I want to see what the teams consist of.
If you were putting a team together, who would you have? Yeah. What type of people would you have, Joe?
The first people I'm going after to begin with are not going to be crime scene people. I'm going to backfill with them. The person I'm going to find, and it's not just going to be one team, it's going to be multiple teams. The person I'm going to find is going to be the best forensic anthropologist I can find out there, even if it means going to the Smithsonian, even if it means going to the Body Farm at UT. Wherever I have to go, the Maple Center in Florida, there's a number of them that are out there. I don't know what capabilities that both the universities and the bigger universities in New Mexico have. University of New Mexico and New Mexico State. I have no idea. But I'm going after the best forensic anthropologist. I'm not talking about somebody that just kind of toys with it and dabbles around with it. And, I'll do this when I'm not, working on cultural anthropology. That's not who I'm looking for. I want a true forensic osteologist, somebody that understands bone, somebody that also understands the nature of the land. I'm really going to want a content area expert that understands the topography out there and the geology. That's another person that's going to be on the team. I would want to have somebody that is a true geologist that actually, and there are people, Dave, I don't know if you know this, there are people out there that work or that have experience as forensic geologists. So they will communicate with like forensic anthropologists when they're going to do a dig. You're looking for certain elements that that make up and compose that environment. I'm going to want at least a consult on this, and then I'm going to backfill with top end crime scene people that can go out and document everything along the way. And it has to be done. You're going to take a real broad area here. And listen, this person, this anonymous person that's not really anonymous because I think their name was redacted out of there is a name. First off, you're going to have investigators who are going to be pressing them for information if they're still, upright and in a vertical position at this point. And I'm going to press them for every bit of info that they have specific to this area. Now, tell us precisely where that this occurred or where you were told that it occurred. And wherever I was told that it occurred and they're sending me out there, I'm going to double that space, because most of the time you're going to come up with bupkis initially. And particularly now, since time has kind of gone by, I think that you proposed a year. I don't want to put this all on you, but the year 2013, 14 was kind of mentioned, perhaps. You got to give yourself some wiggle room in there. But hey, that's better than 1993, when you purchased this place.
That's what I thought we were going to be looking at. I thought we were going to be back in the Annie Farmer time. Yeah. But when I saw the reply, that it was, the term mentioned was 6 years ago, and this is 2019. So give or take a year on either side.
Right.
But even then, that was scary.
Here's the beauty of this. Well, here's the beauty of this. Depending upon how bodies are treated, I don't know. First off, I don't know that there are bodies. But secondly, let's just go down this road. If there are bodies, we don't know how they were treated in the postmortem state in order to get rid of them. Were they stripped of all clothing? Okay, well, don't know that. Maybe they wanted to bury the clothing or anything. Maybe they may have buried any kind of personal items. They came in on a plane with them here. Mm-hmm. They're just going to dump them all in the hole. Okay, and because of the nature of the soil out there, and I would assume that probably once they backfilled a hole, if they used a bit of heavy equipment, guess what they will have done with this, Dave? That you would not say, if somebody's disposing of somebody, down in the swamp or something, they will take this equipment and they'll run back and forth over the top of this thing. And so they'll compress it. One of the things we look for in clandestine burials is we look for depressed areas in the soil. We also look for mounded areas. You think about the classic grave site where you got this kind of mound of dirt. If you're talking about now, since 2013 and 14, if they went in there and they ran back and forth over this area with a piece of heavy equipment, they could have compacted this significantly. And it's had time that with the naked eye, the unaided eye, you're not going to be able to pick up on the nuanced area. That's why we go back to, the imagery that I was talking about, like a multispectral camera where you're using infrared, and they can do these flyovers. Well, they'll see that land that has never been touched by man. And I'm talking about turned earth. The earth has never been turned. And then all of a sudden, people that read this stuff can see where areas have been turned, and it may have been turned in the distant past, maybe a decade before, maybe 2 decades before. They'll say, this does not look like this. This is going to be a target area. And you circle that area and you begin to search that as best you can. But what lies beneath there is going to be critical, because first off, all they said were 2 girls and that they were foreign. Well, they might be preserved so well, Dave, that you're going to be able to pull bony structures still. They might be preserved to that point. No, there's not going to be soft tissue or anything like that. However, you can have teeth. You can have enough of a skeleton where you can begin to decide, well, what you got? First off, is it animal or is it human? And secondly, male, female, what's the status of the skeleton? Can we age the skeleton? Can we bracket the skeleton by 10 years, maybe 5 years, 10 years? They said young. So are we talking before the epiphyseal plates are, kind of sealed off, and the growth plates and all that sort of stuff? Is that sealed off, or is this before they're sealed off? Do we have all the teeth that have erupted? Girls, talking about girls, have 12-year molars erupt. I don't put anything past these people. As far as age ranges go, some of the stuff that we've heard. So that's going to be critical here. You might find a body out there. I don't know. But is it the body or bodies that are connected back to this event? And you want that kind of explanation. And once you're able to get them out, if you find bodies, which is, again, going to be very difficult, they're going to be using ground penetrating radar. If they target in on a spot, you can't just take ground penetrating radar and run over, thousands of yards of earth. That's not the way this works at all. But if you can target in on an area and you begin to move this thing back and forth, you can pick up on disruptions in the substrata here. where you can see something that's kind of mounded up there, or some cases you can actually see the outline of bones, which is kind of cool. It might be too late to use what we call methane probes, where you probe down into the earth to see if there's any kind of decomposing organic matter down there.
Would you have dogs out there with you when you did that?
I suppose that you could. Again, I don't know about in this kind of environment, I don't know what kind of success you would have, but canines are amazing. I mean, they truly are. Some things they can pick up on that we otherwise might not be able to. But what this all comes down to is that this thing has to be organized to the point where there's not going to be any stone left unturned, no pun intended, where you're going to be able to focus in on the job at hand. You're going to have somebody that's leading the team that has no political interest in this whatsoever. They're pure scientists. They just want to know what the facts are. They just want to try to find it, to discover, are their bodies there? And if they are there, how do we go about recovering them in the most effective way possible, where we get everything out of the ground? And then who's going to analyze it, downrange from there? The upside with New Mexico in particular, something I really dig about that state, is that they don't have coroners. It was one of the first states that has a statewide medical examiner's office.
Okay,
and they're really good. They're based out of Albuquerque. I've had several friends that have worked there as they're called medical investigators out there. But yeah, I've had several friends. I was actually on a national task force with one of them, probably one of the sharpest people I've ever met. He's retired now. But yeah, they've got a long history of having highly effective medical legal death investigation resources. And they've even got a forensic pathology training program at their medical school there, which is a real upside. I've known 2 or 3 people that have gone through that program. So couple that with really good forensic anthropology. And, I don't know. I don't know what they'll find.
I was curious if the area in the Southwest, and in particular in this place in New Mexico, lack of humidity is a real thing. We're the polar opposite where Joe and I happen to live. And by the way, we're not Bert and Ernie. We do not live together. We just happen to be geographically very close, but we live in 100% humidity. If it's 97% humidity, we're like, break today.
Wow, how pleasant.
We don't even have, what? Half the time we don't know if our water works or not. We just go outside and take a bath. You just take a bar of soap, you're done. But when you go to this part of New Mexico, I remember one time 3% humidity. I'm like, really? 3%? Woo. So does that have an impact on the preservation?
Of course it does. Yeah, of course it does. In the short term, in particular, it does. But, you'll see, like, for instance, in the Southwest, particularly with shallow surface burials and also remains that are on the surface that have not been touched by scavengers, that's kind of a hard thing. What you will see that occurs out there are naturally occurring mummies, or you'll get some mummification on remains. So things, because the skin, the soft tissue becomes desiccated, essentially it dries out. Just think beef jerky here, okay? And so it becomes desiccated, and so you're retaining soft tissue, in a short period of time. Now, with a burial, we're talking, decade downrange now. If we're thinking about the 24, we're a decade plus now. I doubt very seriously you'd have any soft tissue left behind, but you might have hair. You're going to have these other, and certainly the bony artifacts are going to be there, which is still, for me, it's like we've always talked about, Dave. Every death investigation literally begins with identification, because if you cannot get somebody identified, then you're closed off from the rest of this world that's going to provide information for you. And that's the key to all of it. It's the key also to whoever it is that is the group of predators that have been involved in this case for so long. And that's where the big mystery is, right? We talk a lot about who's on this list, who's on that list. But the one thing that's always left in the dust The one thing that we never have life breathed into for many of these cases, we don't know who they are. We find out who they are. If we find a body and we find out who they are, that is the beginning of the true investigation, because it's with that person that you can go back and you can kind of get a picture of their life. Maybe way back when, how would somebody that's underage make it to the U.S.? How is it that they made it into the U.S.? How, perhaps, did they make it to some isolated location in the middle of the high desert in New Mexico? That is the big question. And what became of them afterwards? I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
When people turn to telehealth for weight loss, they're looking for real support. That's why more people are choosing OrderlyMeds.com. Orderly Meds connects you with real doctors and access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide. No guessing, just a more supportive experience, and all shipped directly to your door in discreet packaging. Do your research, ask questions, then visit OrderlyMeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. That's OrderlyMeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.
Friends Like These, The Murder of Skylar Neese, is now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
911, do you have an emergency?
I have a 16-year-old daughter. Can't get a hold of her. I am scared to death.
We wanted to talk to Skylar's friends.
They're not telling the full story. The truth is gruesomely horrific.
How could you do this to your best friend?
There's a darker secret that's not been said.
Watch the new Hulu original series Friends Like These, The Murder of Skylar Neese on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+. For bundle subscribers, terms apply.
Are you a fraud-paying American? 1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has been a victim of identity fraud. With LifeLock, if your identity is stolen, they fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Last year, billions in refunds were stolen. Could be from your salary, overtime, or second job. Gone. But this year, you don't need to stay a victim, because this tax season, fraud-paying American is something no American should have to claim. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/iHeart. Terms apply.
Time for a sofa upgrade? Introducing Anabe Sofas, where designer style meets budget-friendly prices. Anabe brings you the ultimate in furniture innovation with a modular design that allows you to rearrange your space effortlessly. Perfect for both small and large spaces, Anabe is the only machine-washable sofa inside and out. Say goodbye to stains and messes with liquid and stain-resistant fabrics that make cleaning easy. Liquids simply slide right off. Designed for custom comfort, our high-resilience foam lets you choose between a sink-in feel or a supportive memory foam blend. Plus, our pet-friendly, stain-resistant fabrics ensure your sofa stays beautiful for years. Don't compromise quality for price. Visit WashableSofas.com to upgrade your living space today. Sofas start at just $699 with no-risk returns and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Get up to 60% off, plus free shipping and free returns. Shop now at WashableSofas.com. Offers are subject to change and certain restrictions may apply.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.